On the morning of September 11th, 2001, Klaus Schwab sat having breakfast in the Park East Synagogue in New York City with Rabbi Arthur Schneier. Oh, that guy that the woman.
Not a synagogue, folks. Not a synagogue. It's a Gnostic temple.
No, it's okay. Arthur Schneier, former vice president of the World Jewish Congress and close associate of the Bronfman and Lauder families. By the way, Bronfman and Lauder, they funded a lot of birthright stuff. Anyway, together, the two men watched one of the most impactful events of the next 20 years unfold as planes struck the World Trade Center buildings. Now World Trade Center buildings. Now, 2 decades on, Klaus Schwab again sits in a front row seat of yet another generation-defining moment in modern human history.
How are they always getting front row seats to these surprise events, folks?
Yes, surprise. Always seeming to have a front row seat when tragedy approaches, Schwab's proximity to world-altering events likely owes to his being one of the most well-connected men on Earth. As a driving force behind the World Economic Forum, the international organization for public-private cooperation, aka corporate fascism, Schwab has courted heads of state, leading business executives, and the elite of academic and scientific circles into the Davos fold for over 50 years. More recently, he has also courted the ire of many due to his more recent role as the frontman of the Great Reset, a sweeping effort to make civilization globally for the express benefit of the elite of the World Economic Forum and their allies.
Nuremberg. We're going to talk about Nuremberg. Okay, continue.
Schwab?
No, but remember, that's one of the things we're going to continue talking about, because why does stuff keep happening in Nuremberg?
Oh, we forgot about that here.
But all right, continue.
I lost where I was.
Sorry.
Okay, Schwab, during the forum's annual meeting in January 2021, stressed that the building of trust would be integral to the success of the Great Reset, signaling a subsequent expansion of the initiative's already massive public relations campaign. Though Schwab called for the building of trust through unspecified progress, quote unquote, trust is normally facilitated through transparency. Perhaps that is why so many have declined to trust Mr. Schwab and his motives, as so little is known about the man's history and background prior to his founding of the World Economic Forum in the early 1970s. Like many prominent frontmen for elite-sponsored agendas, the online record of Schwab has been well sanitized, making it difficult to come across information on his early history, as well as information on his family. Yet, having been born in Ravensburg, Germany in 1938, many have speculated in recent months that Schwab's family may have had some tie to Axis war efforts, ties that, if exposed, could threaten the reputation of the World Economic Forum and bring unwanted scrutiny to its professed missions and motives. In this unlimited hangout investigation, the past that Klaus Schwab has worked to hide is explored in detail, revealing the involvement of the Schwab family not only in the Nazi quest for an atomic bomb, but apartheid South Africa's illegal nuclear program. Especially revealing is the history of Klaus's father, Eugene Schwab, who led the Nazi-supported German branch of a Swiss engineering firm into the war as a prominent military contractor. That company, Escher Wyss, would use slave labor to produce machinery critical to the Nazi war effort, as well as the Nazis' effort to produce heavy water for its nuclear program. Years later, at the same company, a young Klaus Schwab served on the board of directors when the decision was made to furnish the racist apartheid regime of South Africa with the necessary equipment to further its quest to become a nuclear power. With the World Economic Forum now a prominent advocate for nuclear non-proliferation and clean energy, nuclear energy, Klaus Schwab's past makes him a poor spokesperson for his professed agenda for the present and the future. Yet, digging even deeper into his activities, it becomes clear that Schwab's real role has long been to shape global, regional, and industry agendas of the present in order to ensure the continuity of larger, much older agendas that came into disrepute after World War II, not just unclear technology, nuclear technology, but also eugenics influenced population control policies. Dude, can I say something? I was trading stocks from the year, like in a firm, actually with our friend like Kravitz and a few other guys that we know, from 02 to 2010. And it's funny, I remember watching CNBC every single day. I remember every year they would cover Davos, every winter. And everybody always thought Davos was like the place to be. Oh, we're here, Maria Bartiromo, we're here in Davos in the cozy chalets of Switzerland and and then they had like Bill Gates there and they had all these, captains of industry. Like it's a place you wanted to, place you want to be.
McCarthy is a part of the World Economic Forum.
Yeah.
Klaus Schwab owns the Republican Party and the Democrat Party. That goes without saying.
Can I just read you, like, it's a real quick read. Who are the names that are going, the rhinos that are going?
Laura Loomer posted a whole thing, and just look at her.
Sure.
She's all over that, like white on rice.
I'm looking for my tweet in response to.
I think Laura Loomer is my hero, which is very difficult for me to say.
Like I said,
she's like a 20-something girl
29
who probably watched Barney growing up, and yet somehow one of those people became kind of my hero. I'm serious. It's kind of it's a strange feeling, but
here are the rhinos. What the flip? It just keeps disappearing. There we go. Okay, USA people. John Kerry. We know who that is. Catherine Tai, United States Trade Representative. Martin J. Walsh, Secretary of Labor, United States. Okay, Samantha Power, big leftist. I know her. Avril Haines, leftist, DNI. Christopher Wray, director of the FBI. Why the hell is the director of FBI going to Davos? Brian Kemp, Republican, governor of Georgia. Darrell Issa, congressman from California, Republican. Gretchen Whitmer, this psycho from Michigan. J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois. She was one of the people that helped Obama. James Risch, senator from Idaho. Kristen Sinema, who's like kind of a Republicanish, but she's independent, from Arizona. Maria Elvira Salazar, congresswoman from Florida, Republican. I don't know if she represents you. Mike Gallagher, congressman, Republican from Wisconsin.
That's a problem right there, because this guy is very involved in the UFO topic.
Mike Gallagher, yeah. Oh man, and that's all for the Republicans. There's a bunch of Democrats going,
mostly Democrats, but
but
McCarthy. Okay, McCarthy might not be going.
He's involved. He's involved.
But he dude, he has a profile on the World Economic Forum website.
I know.
That doesn't mean that to have a profile there, you're a member.
Yeah, they scrubbed Putin's thing, obviously. Putin's profile. Okay, let's keep reading this. A Swabian story.
Can I read that part?
Yeah. We'll just interchange between sections.
Okay. Swabian story. On the 10th of July, 1870, Klaus Schwab's grandfather, Jacob Wilhelm Gottfried Schwab, referred to later as simply Gottfried, not to be confused with the Nigerian
or Gilbert Gottfried.
Yeah, that's okay. Was born in a Germany at war with its French neighbors. Karlsruhe, the town where Gottfried Schwab was born, was located in the Grand Duchy. Is that Duchy or Duchy? I don't know.
Duchy, yeah.
You know what? I'm going to say Duchy. In the Grand Duchy of Baden.
Like Poopy.
Yeah, exactly. It's more Morrison. Okay. Which was ruled in 1870 by the 43-year-old Grand Duke, the Grand Duchy of Baden, Frederick I. Anybody watch Gummy Bears? They know the word Dookie is big in that. Okay, the following year, the aforementioned Duke would be present at the proclamation of the German Empire, which took place in the Hall of Mirrors at the Palace of Versailles. He was the only son-in-law of the incumbent Emperor William I as Frederick I, who was, by the way, Illuminati. We read about him in Rabbi Antelman's book. Was one of the reigning sovereigns of Germany. Unbelievable. By the time Gottfried Schwab turned 18 years old, Germany would see William II take the throne upon the death of his father, Frederick III, also mentioned by Rabbi Antelman. Unbelievable. In 1893, a 23-year-old Gottfried Schwab would officially depart from Germany, giving up his German citizenship and leaving Karlsruhe in order to emigrate to Switzerland. At the time, his occupation was noted as being that of a simple baker. Here, Gottfried would meet Marie Lapère, who was from Kirchberg near Bern, Switzerland, and who was 5 years his junior. They would marry in Rogwil, Bern, on the 27th of May, 1898, and the following year, on the 27th April 1899, their child Eugene Schwab was born. That's Klaus Schwab's father. At the time of his birth, Gottfried Schwab had moved up in the world, having become a machine engineer. When Eugene was around 1 year old, Gottfried and Marie Schwab decided to return to live in Karlsruhe, and Gottfried reapplied for German citizenship again. Eugene Schwab would follow in the footsteps of his father and also become a machine engineer, and in future years, he would advise his children to do the same. Eugene Schwab would eventually begin working at a factory in a town in Upper Swabia in southern Germany, capital of the district of Ravensburg, Baden-Württemberg, okay? The factory where he would forge his career was the German branch of a Swiss company named Escher Wyss. Switzerland had many long-standing economic ties to the Ravensburg area, with Swiss traders in the early 19th century bringing in yarn and weaving products. In the same period, Ravensburg delivered grain to Rorschach until 1870, alongside breeding animals and various cheeses deep within the Swiss Alps. Between 1809 and 1837, there were 375 Swiss people living in Ravensburg, though the Swiss population had dropped to 133 by 1910. In the 1830s, skilled Swiss workers set up a cotton factory with an incorporated bleaching and finishing plant owned and maintained by their, how the hell are you going to read that? The Erpf brothers. Hey, you still there?
Yeah, 1 second. Let me find this for you.
The Erpf, ERPF.
1 second. ER.
That's like Michelle Pfeiffer. You know
Yeah,
that?
Erp. Like the Earth, like but Earth.
Yeah, you know that actress Michelle Pfeiffer?
Yes.
Yeah, like that kind of. Okay. The Ravensburg horse market, created in around 1840, also attracted many people from Switzerland, especially after 1847 opening of the railway line from Ravensburg to Friedrichshafen, a town situated on nearby Lake Constance on the borderlands of Switzerland and Germany. So, like I said again, anybody who speaks a German type language should be banned from naming anything, even places in their own country, because it makes me want to vomit, and everybody else, even the locals, want to vomit when they say these words. So they should hire an Italian guy just to rename everything, something cool in Italian. All right. Now, Rorschach, by the way, you know, like the
Claudio Schwabio.
Yeah. We spoke about somebody named Rorschach the other day. He was one of the superheroes.
Yeah.
It was in relation to what I think about Elon Musk. But anyway, Rorschach grain traders make regular visits to the Ravensburger corn house. And eventually this cross-border cooperation and trade also led to a branch of the Zurich machine factory. By the way, I think Rabbi Emanuel Shochet is from Zurich.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so again, this led to a branch of the Zurich machine factory, Escher Wyss and Sai, opening in the city. This feat was made plausible once a train line connecting the Swiss to the German route network was completed between 1850 and 1853. The factory was set up by Walter Zuppinger between 1856 to 1859, and would begin production in 1860. In 1861, we can see the first official patent of the manufacturer's Escher Wyss in Ravensburg of, quote, peculiar facilities on mechanical looms for ribbon weaving. Interesting. Oh, what a tangled web we weave. All right. At this time, the Ravensburg branch of Escher Wyss would be directed by Walter Zuppinger and would be where he developed his tangential turbine and where he gained a number of additional patents. In 1870, Zuppinger, along with others, would also have founded a paper mill works in Bayernfurt, close to Ravensburg. He retired in 1875 and devoted all his energies to the further advance of turbines. Now it's getting more interesting. At the turn of the new century, Escher Wyss had put the ribbon weaving to one side and began to concentrate on much bigger projects, like the production of large industrial turbines. And in 1907, they sought an approval and concession procedure for the construction of a hydropower plant near Daggern am Rhein, which
on the Rhine River.
I guess that's the Rhine River, yeah, which was reported in a Basel brochure from 1925. By 1920, Escher Wyss found themselves embroiled in serious financial difficulties. The Treaty of Versailles had restricted the military and economic growth of Germany following the Great War, and the Swiss company found the downturn in neighboring national civil engineering projects too much to bear. The parent branch of Escher Wyss was located in Zurich and dated back to 1805, and the company, which still benefited from a good reputation and a history lasting more than a century, was deemed too important to lose. In December 1920, a reorganization was carried out by writing down the share capital from 11.5 to 4.015 million French francs, and which was later increased again to 5.515 million Swiss francs. By the end of the financial year of 1931, Escher was still losing money. Yet the plucky company continued to deliver large-scale civil engineering contracts throughout the 1920s, as noted in the official correspondence written in 1924 from Wilhelm III, Prince of Urach, to the company Escher Wyss and to the asset manager of the House of Urach. Accountant Julius Heller. Okay. What did you say?
No, so however you pronounce it is fine.
How about that?
No
The house of
no one here is gonna get. They actually want you to pronounce it incorrectly, so that
the house of that's what it sounds like. All right, it's literally try saying that 3 times fast.
Urach, yeah.
Okay. This document discusses the general terms and conditions of the Association of German Water Turbine Manufacturers for the delivery of machines and other equipment for hydropower plants. This is also confirmed in a brochure on the conditions of the Association of German Water Turbine Manufacturers for the installation of turbines and machine parts within the German Reich. Printed on March 20th, 1923, in an advertising brochure from Escher Wyss for a universal oil pressure regulator. Okay. After the Great Depression in the early 30s had laid waste to the global economy, Escher Wyss announced, quote, as the catastrophic development of the economic situation in connection with the currency declines, the company, Escher Wyss, is temporarily unable to continue its current liabilities in various customer countries. The company also revealed that they would apply for a court deferral to the Swiss newspaper, the New Zürcher Nachrichten, which reported on the 1st of December 1931 that the company, Escher Wyss, has been granted a staying of bankruptcy until the end of March 1932, and acting as a curator in Switzerland, a trust company has been appointed. The article stated optimistically that, quote, there should be a prospect of continuing operations. In 1931, Escher Wyss employed around 1,300 non-contracted workers and 550 salaried employers. Okay. In the mid-1930s, Escher Wyss had again found itself in financial trouble. In order to rescue the company this time, a consortium was brought on board to save the ailing engineering firm. The consortium was partly formed by the Federal Bank of Switzerland, which was coincidentally headed by Max Schwab, who was of no relation to Klaus Schwab. And further restructuring took place. In 1938, it was announced that an engineer at the firm, Colonel Jacob Schmidheiny, would become the new president of the board of directors of Escher Wyss. Soon after the outbreak of a war in 1939, Schmidheiny was quoted as saying, The outbreak of war does not necessarily mean unemployment for machine industry in a neutral country. On the contrary, Escher Wyss and its new management were apparently looking forward to profiting off the war, paving the way for their transformation into a major Nazi military contractor, which is, by the way, how very accurately describes our current military industrial complex here in the United States, unfortunately.
Hmm.
A brief history of Jewish persecution in Ravensburg.
Let me read. I'll read that.
You want to read? Okay.
When Adolf Hitler came to power, many things changed in Germany, and the story of the Jewish population of Ravensburg during that era is a sad one to tell. Yet it was hardly the first time that anti-Semitism had been first recorded as having reared its ugly head in the region. In the Middle Ages, a synagogue mentioned as far back as 1345 was located at the center of Ravensburg, serving a small Jewish community which can be traced from 1330 to 1429. At the end of 1429 through 1430, the Jews of Ravensburg were targeted and a horrific massacre ensued. In the nearby settlements of Lindau, Oberlingen, Buckhorn, later renamed Friedrichshafen, Meersburg, and Konstanz, there were mass arrests of Jewish residents. The Jews of Lindau were burnt alive during the 1429-1430 Ravensburg blood libel, in which members of the Jewish community were accused of ritually sacrificing babies. In August 1430, in Oberlingen, the Jewish community was forced to convert. 11 of them did so, and the 12 who refused were killed. The massacres which took place in Lindau, Oberlingen, and Ravensburg happened with direct approval of the ruling king Sigmund, and any remaining Jews were soon expelled from the region. Ravensburg had this ban confirmed by Emperor Ferdinand I in 1559, and it was upheld, for example, in an 1804 instruction issued for the city guard, which read, quote, "Since the Jews are not allowed to engage in any trade or business here, no one else is allowed to enter the city by post or by carriage. The rest, however, if they have not received a permit for a longer or shorter stay from the police office, are to be removed from the city by the police station." Not until the 19th century were Jews able to settle legally in Ravensburg again, and even by then their number remained so small that a synagogue was not rebuilt. In 1858, there were only 3 Jews recorded in Ravensburg, and in 1895, this number peaked at 57. From the turn of the century until 1933, the numbers of Jews living in Ravensburg had steadily decreased until the community was only made up of 23 people. By the start of the 1930s, there were 7 main Jewish families living in Ravensburg, including the Adler, Erlanger, Hamburger, Herman, Harburger, Herman, Landau, Rose, and Sonderman families. Usually, by the way, Jews don't normally have 2 N's at the end, which is interesting. After the National Socialists seized power, some of Ravensburg's Jews were initially forced to emigrate, while others would later be murdered in Nazi concentration camps. Leading up to World War II, there were many public displays of hatred towards a small community of Jews in and around Ravensburg. As early as March 13th, 1933, again, about 3 weeks before the nationwide Nazi boycott of all Jewish shops in Germany, SA guards posted themselves in front of 2 of the 5 Jewish shops in Ravensburg and tried to prevent potential buyers from entering, putting up signs on one shop stating, "Volvert closed until Aryanization." Volverts would soon become Aryanized and would be the only Jewish-owned shop to survive the Nazi pogrom. The other owners of the 4 large Jewish department stores in Ravensburg, Knopf, Merkur, Landauer, and Wallersteiner, were all forced to sell their properties to non-Jewish merchants between 1935 and 1938. During this period, many of Ravensburg's Jews were able to flee abroad before the worst of the National Socialist persecution began. While at least 8 died violently, it was reported that 3 Jewish citizens who lived in Ravensburg survived because of their, quote, Aryan spouses. Some of the Jews who were arrested in Ravensburg during Kristallnacht were forced to march through the streets of Baden-Baden under SS guard supervision the following day, and were later deported to Sachsenhausen concentration camp. Sachsenhausen. Horrific Nazi crimes against humanity took place in Ravensburg. On January 1st, 1934, the law for the prevention of hereditary diseases, sound familiar, came into force in Nazi Germany, meaning people with diagnosed illnesses such as dementia, schizophrenia, epilepsy, hereditary deafness, and various other mental disorders could be legally forcibly sterilized. Kind of like they wanted to do to this woman, Ina what's her name? Zvonietska,
Right.
a week ago in Stuttgart. They wanted to institutionalize her and give her 2 schmeckzines, two doses.
Folks, they're also sterilizing like most of the world right now.
Even though she's 85 years old, what are you sterilizing?
No, but that's what I'm saying. You know, that's why I mentioned the rest of the people in the world.
Okay. In the Ravensburg City Hospital, today called Heilig Geist Hospital, like Heilige, like important.
Yeah.
Forced sterilizations were carried out beginning in April 1934. By 1936, sterilization was the most performed medical procedure in the municipal hospital. In the pre-war years of the 1930s, leading up to the German annexation of Poland, Ravensburg's Escher Wyss factory, now managed directly by Klaus Schwab's father, Eugene Schwab, continued to be the biggest employer in Ravensburg. Not only was the factory a major employer in the town, but Hitler's own Nazi party awarded the Escher Wyss Ravensburg branch the title of National Socialist Model Company, while Schwab was at the helm. The Nazis were potentially wooing the Swiss company for cooperation in the coming war, and their advances were eventually reciprocated. You want to read this next part?
Yeah. So Escher Wyss, Ravensburg, and the war. Ravensburg was an anomaly in wartime Germany, as it was never targeted by any Allied airstrikes. The presence of the Red Cross and a rumored agreement with various companies, including Escher Wyss, saw the Allied forces publicly agree to not target the southern German town. It was not classified as a significant military target throughout the war. For that reason, the town still maintains many of its original features. However, much darker things were afoot in Ravensburg once the war began. Hold on. Okay, Squeaky, come, Squeaky, make a decision. In or out? Okay,
They don't know.
Yeah.
You have to make decisions for them.
Yeah.
They're like
Okay.
women. Just gotta make decisions for them.
In some ways, yes. Okay. In some ways, not. Okay. So, yeah. So it was not classified as a significant military target throughout the war. For that reason, the town still maintains many of its original features. However, much darker things were afoot in Ravensburg once the war began. Dude, that is such a crazy thing. You want to bomb, right? The place where, anyway, Eugene Schwab continued to manage the National Socialist Model Company for Escher Wyss, and the Swiss company would aid the Nazi Wehrmacht, to produce significant weapons of war as well as more basic armaments. The Escher Wyss company was a leader in large turbine technology for hydroelectric dams and power plants, but they also manufactured parts for German fighter planes. They were also intimately involved in much more sinister projects happening behind the scenes, which, if completed, could have changed the outcome of World War II. Nazi officials in front of the Ravensburg town hall. Okay. Wow. Western military intelligence were already aware of Escher Wyss's complicity and collaboration with the Nazis. There are records available from Western military intelligence at the time, specifically record group 226, from the data compiled by the Office of Strategic Service, the OSS. That's the precursor to the CIA, which shows the Allied forces were aware of some of the Escher Wyss business dealings with the Nazis. Okay. They were aware of all of it, okay? Within RG 226, there are 3 specific mentions of Escher Wyss, including file number 47178, which reads, Escher Wyss of Switzerland is working on a large order for Germany. Flamethrowers are dispatched from Switzerland under the name Brennstoffbehälter, dated September 1944. File number 41589 showed that the Swiss were allowing German exports to be stored in their country, a supposedly neutral nation, during World War II. The entry reads, business relations between Empresa Nacional Calvo Sotelo Escher Wyss and Mineral Selbu Gesellschaft, July 1944. Okay. See also L42627, report on collaboration between the Spanish Impresa Nacional Calvo Sotelo, and the German Rheinmetall Borsig on German exports stored in Switzerland. People forget that Spain was allied with the Nazis, with the fascists during World War II.
Franco. Yeah.
File number 72654 claimed that Hungary's bauxite, whatever, was formerly sent to Germany. Was formerly sent to Germany and Switzerland for refining. Then a government syndicate built an aluminum plant at Dunalmas of the border on the borders of Hungary. Electric power was provided. Hungary contributed coal mines, and equipment was ordered from the Swiss firm Escher Wyss. Production began in 1941. Okay, yet Escher Wyss were leaders in one blossoming field in particular: the creation of new turbine technology. The company had engineered a 14,500 HP turbine for the Norsk Hydro Industrial Facility's strategically important hydroelectric plant at Vemork, near Rjukan in Norway. Rjukan, probably something like that. The Norsk Hydro plant, part powered by Escher Wyss, was the only industrial plant under Nazi control capable of producing heavy water. Folks, whenever you hear heavy water, it's always related to like nuclear energy or a bomb.
Yeah.
Okay, heavy water, producing heavy water, an ingredient essential for making plutonium for the Nazi atom bomb program. The Germans had put all possible resources behind the production of heavy water, but the Allied forces were aware of the potentially game-changing tech advances by the increasingly desperate Nazis. During 1942 and 1943, the hydro plant was the target of partially successful British commando and Norwegian resistance raids, although heavy water production continued. The Allied forces would drop more than 400 bombs in the plant, which barely affected the operations at the sprawling facility. In 1944, German ships attempted to transport heavy water back to Germany, but the Norwegian resistance were able to sink the ship carrying the payload. Good going. With help from Escher Wyss, the Nazis were almost able to change the tides of war and bring about an Axis victory. Back in the Escher Wyss factory in Ravensburg, Eugene Schwab had been busy putting forced laborers to work at his model Nazi company. During the years of World War II, nearly 3,600 forced laborers worked in Ravensburg, including at Escher Wyss. According to the city archivist in Ravensburg, Andrea Schmuder, what a name. The Escher Wyss machine factory in Ravensburg employed between 198 and 203 civil workers and POWs during the war. Karl Schweitzer, a local Lindau historian, states that Escher Wyss maintained a small special camp for forced laborers on the factory premises. The use of masses of forced laborers in Ravensburg made it necessary to set up one of the largest recorded Nazi forced labor camps in the workshop of a former carpenter's at Zeigelstrasse 16. At one time, the camp in question accommodated 125 French prisoners of war who were later redistributed to other camps in 1942. The French workers were replaced by 150 Russian prisoners of war. I'm sure many of them were Jews, right?
Yeah.
Who it was rumored were treated the worst out of all the POWs, not surprisingly. One such prisoner was Zina Jakusheva, whose work card and workbook are held by the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. Those documents identify her as a non-Jewish forced laborer assigned to Ravensburg, Germany during 1943 and 1944.
Yeah.
Eugene Schwab would dutifully maintain the status quo during the war years. Yeah, that's Klaus Schwab's father, folks. Again, there's a lot of details here. Eugene Schwab, he ran this whole facility.
Yeah.
Okay. After all, with young Klaus Martin Schwab having been born in 1938 and his brother Urs Schwab, Urs or Ars, probably Ars. Okay. Ars Reiner Schwab, Ars Rob Reiner Meathead Schwab. Okay. Born a few years later. It's all coming together, folks. Okay. Eugene would have wanted to keep his children out of harm's way.
Amazing.
I did something on Twitter about Rob Reiner that's doing pretty good with like views and retweets, surprisingly. You want to read this?
Yeah. Klaus Martin Schwab, international man of mystery, baby.
Yeah, baby. Yeah.
Born on March 30th, 1938 in Ravensburg, Germany.
He's all sixes and sevens. He's all sixes and sevens. All right, continue. Sorry.
Klaus Schwab was the eldest child in a normal nuclear family. Oops, lost the place. The hell. Between 1945 and 1947, Klaus attended primary school in Au, Germany, like Au.
Yeah.
Klaus Schwab recalls in a 2006 interview with the Irish Times that after the war, I chaired the Franco-German Regional Youth Association. My heroes were Adenauer, De Gasperi, and De Gaulle.
Not enough gravel. I'm sorry.
No, but if I do more gravel, it's gonna be like Soros.
No. Soros is the one without the gravel. This guy is with the gravel.
Soros is like Klaus Schwab and his younger. You should hear Soros now, dude. It's terrible. He's getting old. He's getting horribly old. Klaus Schwab and his younger brother Urs Rainer Schwab were both to follow in the footsteps of their grandfather Gottfried and their father Eugene, and would both initially train as machine engineers. Klaus's father had told the young Schwab that if he wanted to make an impact on the world, then he should train as a machine engineer. This would only be the beginning of Schwab's university credentials. Klaus would begin studying his plethora of degrees at Spahn Gymnasium, Ravensburg, between 1949 and 1957. That's how they call gymnasia, like high-level schools. Eventually graduating from the Humanistisches Gymnasium in Ravensburg. Between 1958 and 1962, Klaus began working with various engineering companies, and in 1962, Klaus completed his mechanical engineering studies at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich with an engineering diploma. The following year, he also completed an economics course at the University of Freiburg, Switzerland. From 1963 until 1966, Klaus worked as assistant to the Director General of the German Machine Building Association, VDMA, Frankfurt. In 1965, Klaus was also working on his doctorate from the ETH Zurich, writing his dissertation on the longer-term export credit as a business problem in mechanical engineering. Then in 1966, he received his doctorate in engineering from the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, Zurich. At this time, Klaus's father, Eugene Schwab, was swimming in bigger circles than he had previously swam. After being a well-known personality in Ravensburg as the managing director of the Escher Wyss factory from before the war, Eugene would eventually be elected as president of the Ravensburg Chamber of Commerce. In 1966, during the founding of the German Committee for Splugen railway tunnel, Eugene Schwab defined the founding of the German Committee as a project that creates a better and faster connection for large circles in our increasingly converging Europe, and thus offers new opportunities for cultural, economic, and social development. In 1967, Klaus Schwab gained a doctorate in economics from the University of Freiburg, Switzerland, as well as a Master of Public Administration qualification from John F. Kennedy School of Government at Harvard in the United States. Also, while we were liberating Jerusalem, this prick was getting a degree in Harvard. Oh, listen to this. Listen what else happened at Harvard.
Yeah, who was giving him his degree at Harvard?
While at Harvard, Schwab was taught by Henry Kissinger.
Yeah, the one who refused to help Israel during that.
Erev Rav of all Erev Rav was teaching Klaus Schwab while Israel was defending themselves. Who he would later say were among the top 3 to 4 figures that most influenced his thinking over the course of his entire life.
Bro, do you know, can I tell you something that's just shocking to me?
No.
I literally know someone I used to be close with, right? Who's like, basically, who's like, you know, someone very close to me who worked directly as his secretary.
That's who's Kissinger?
Yeah, recently. But this is when he was already like 172.
Yeah.
You know, he still has like a little office, like,
yeah.
Right.
Anyway, in the previously mentioned Irish Times article of 2006, Klaus talks about that period as being very important to the formation of his present ideological thinking, stating, quote, "Years later, when I came back from the US after my studies at Harvard, there were 2 events that had a decisive triggering event on me. The first was a book by Jean-Jacques Servan Schreiber, The American Challenge, which said Europe would lose out against the US because of Europe's inferior management methods. The other event was, and this is relevant to Ireland, the Europe of the 6 became the Europe of the 9. These 2 events who helped shape Klaus Schwab into a man who wanted to change the way people went about their business. That same year, Klaus's younger brother, Urs Rainer Schwab, graduated from ETH Zurich as a mechanical engineer.
Pronounce Ars.
Arson. And Klaus Schwab went to work for his father's old company, Escher Wyss, soon to become Sulzer Escher Wyss AG Zurich, as assistant to the chairman to aid in the reorganization of the merging companies. This leads us towards Klaus's nuclear connections.
Okay, here we go. The rise of the technocrat. Sulzer, a Swiss company whose origins date back to 1834, hopefully we don't need to hear the whole history of that, had first risen to prominence after starting to build compressors in 1906. By 1914, the family-run firm had become part of, of three joint stock companies, one of which was the official holding company. In the 1930s, Sulzer's profits would suffer during the Great Depression, and like many businesses at the time, faced disruption and industrial actions from their workers. World War II may not have affected Switzerland as much as their neighbors, but the economic boom that was to follow led to Sulzer growing in power and market dominance. In 1966, just before the arrival of Klaus Schwab at Escher Wyss, the Swiss turbine manufacturers signed a cooperation agreement with the Sulzer brothers in Winterthur.
Yeah.
Sulzer and Escher Wyss would begin to merge in 1966 when Sulzer purchased 53% of the company's shares. Escher Wyss would officially become Sulzer Escher Wyss AG in 1969 when the last of the shares were acquired by the Sulzer brothers. Once the merger had started, Escher Wyss would begin to be restructured, and two of the existing board members would be the first to find their service to Escher Wyss coming to an end. Dr. H. Schindler and Dr. W. Stoffel would resign from the board of directors, now headed by George Sulzer and Alfred Schaffner. Dr. Schindler had been a member of the Escher Wyss board of directors for 28 years and had worked alongside Eugene Schwab throughout much of his service. Was Schindler just mentioned? Like, is he talking about Oscar Schindler? Oh, okay. Because this is the first time Schindler's name is mentioned, as far as I know.
Yeah. Not sure.
Oh, here we go again. Okay, so Peter Schmidheiny would later take over as chairman of the board of directors of Escher Wyss, continuing the Schmidheiny family rule over the company's executives. During the restructuring process, it was decided that Escher Wyss and Sulzer would concentrate on separate areas of machine engineering, with the Escher Wyss factories primarily working on a hydraulic power plant construction, including turbines, storage pumps, reversing machines, closing devices and pipelines, as well as steam turbines, turbo compressors, evaporation systems, centrifuges, and machines for the paper and pulp industry. Sulzer would concentrate on the refrigeration industry, as well as steam boiler construction and gas turbines. Okay, on January 1st, 1968, the freshly reorganized Sulzer Escher Wyss AG was rolled out publicly, and the company had become streamlined, a move deemed necessary because of several large acquisitions. This included a close collaboration with Brown Boveri, a group of Swiss electric engineer companies who would also work for the Nazis, supplying the Germans with some of their U-boat technology used during World War II. That's the submarines.
Mm-hmm.
Brown Boveri was also described as defense-related electrical contractors and would find the conditions of the Cold War arms race to be beneficial to their business. Surprise, surprise. The merger and reorganization of these Swiss mechanical engineering giants saw their collaboration pay off in unique ways. During the 1968 Winter Olympics in Grenoble, Sulzer and Escher Wyss used 8 refrigeration compressors to create tons of artificial ice. Oh, that's nice. In 1969, the two firms combined to help in the building of a new passenger ship named Hamburg, the first ship in the world to be fully air-conditioned, thanks to Sulzer Escher Wyss combination. How nice of them.
Yeah.
And they make snow cones for kids on the side. Okay. Other than that, they're great guys. Okay. In 1967, Klaus Schwab officially burst onto the scene of the Swiss business community and took a lead in the merger between Sulzer and Escher Wyss, as well as forming profitable alliances with Brown Boveri and others. In December 1967, Klaus would speak at a Zurich event to the top Swiss machine engineering organizations, the Employers Association of Swiss Machine and Metal Manufacturers, and the Association of Swiss Machine Manufacturers. In his talk, he would correctly predict the importance of incorporating computers into modern Swiss machine engineering, stating that in 1971, products that are not even on the market today are likely to account for up to a quarter of sales. This requires companies to systematically research possible developments and identify gaps in the market. Today, 18 out of the 20 largest companies in our machine industry have been planning departments that are entrusted with such tasks. Of course, everyone has to make use of the latest technological advances, and the computer is one of them. The many small and medium-sized companies in our machine industry take the path of cooperation or use the services of special data processing service providers. Okay. Computers and data were obviously seen as important to the future, according to Schwab, and this was further projected in the reorganization of the Escher Wyss during the merger. So Sulzer's modern website reflects the noteworthy change in direction, stating that in 68, quote, material technology activities are intensified by Sulzer and form the basis of for medical technology products. The fundamental change from a machine company, building company to a technology corporation starts to become apparent. Klaus Schwab was helping to turn Sulzer Escher Wyss into something more than just a machine building giant. He was transforming them into a technology corporation, driving at high speed into a high-tech future. Should also be noted that Sulzer Escher Wyss changed another focus of their business to help them, quote, form the basis for medical technology products. Medical technology products. Okay, an area not previously mentioned as a target industry for Sulzer and or Escher Wyss. But technology advancement wasn't the only upgrade Klaus Schwab wanted to introduce at Sulzer Escher Wyss. By the way, this was way before Noah Harari was born. So just to give you an idea, Noah Harari didn't introduce Klaus Schwab to. Anyway, so he also wanted to change how the company thought about their business managerial style. Harari and Greta are two abused children. They just Schwab and his close associates were pushing an entirely new business philosophy, which would allow, quote, all employees to accept the imperatives of motivation and to ensure at home a sense of flexibility and maneuverability. It is here in the late 1960s where we see Klaus begin to emerge as a more public figure. At this time, the Sulzer Escher Wyss company also became more interested in engaging with the press than ever before. In January 1969, the Swiss giant set up a public advisory session entitled The Press Day of the Machine Industry, which mainly concerned questions on company management. During the event, Schwab would state that companies using authoritarian styles of business management are unable to fully activate the human capital. An argument he would use on many separate occasions during the late 1960s. Can I just take a quick moment to point something out, folks?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you, let's say, were part of the Nazi war machine, and it would seem that his father here was the most important part of the Nazi war machine, developing their atomic bomb program, producing the heavy water. It couldn't have been done without his turbines and who knows what else, right? Employing slave labor. So you would think that if you're really embarrassed about that, you're really embarrassed about the Nazi, actions of a family member, right? You're not going to want to go back to work at the exact same company that he used during the Nazi war effort, right? You'd want to distance yourself somewhat from everything involved in that. That's what people do usually when they're actually regretful of anything that their family was involved in that was very bad. Right? If you're a good person and your family was involved, let's say, in the torture industry, okay, dungeons and whatnot, you're going to want to move. You're going to want to go into a different business. Perhaps puppy adoptions or something of that nature. Right? You're not going to go on continuing the fabrication of dungeons or something like that.
Yeah.
Iron Maidens, like Cat o' Nine Tails, the whipping thing. Okay. You're not gonna, but not only did he go back, he turned it into a gigantic monster beyond anything that the Nazis had.
Yeah.
Am I crazy in this?
No.
Like, how does this they just go back like nothing? Like they never stop, folks.
Yeah, they don't.
He's a Nazi, the son of a Nazi. Okay, plutonium and Pretoria, that's you.
Yeah. Plutonium and Pretoria, not to be confused with Pretoria, Peter Griffin's country. Escher Wyss were pioneers in some of the most important tech and power generation. As the U.S. Department of Energy points out in their paper on supercritical CO2 Brayton cycle development, a device used in hydro and nuclear power plants, Escher Wyss, quote, Escher Wyss was the first company known to develop the turbo machinery for CBC systems starting in 1939. Going on to state that 24 systems were built, with Escher Wyss designing the power conversion cycles and building the turbo machinery for all but 3. By 1966, just before the entrance of Schwab into Escher Wyss and the start of the Sulzer merger, the Escher Wyss helium compressor was designed for the Lafleur Corporation and continued the evolution of the Brayton cycle development. This technology was still of importance to the arms industry by 1986, with nuclear-powered drones being equipped with a helium-cooled Brayton cycle nuclear reactor. Escher Wyss had been involved with manufacturing and installing nuclear technology at least as early as 1962, as shown by this patent for a heat exchange arrangement for a nuclear power plant, and this patent from 1966 for a nuclear reactor gas turbine plant with emergency cooling. After Schwab left Sulzer Escher Wyss, Sulzer would also help to develop special turbo compressors for uranium enrichment to yield reactor fuels. When Klaus Schwab joined Sulzer Escher Wyss in 1967 and started the reorganization of the company to be a technology corporation, the involvement of Sulzer Escher Wyss in the darker aspects of the global nuclear arms race became immediately more pronounced. Before Klaus became involved, Escher Wyss had often concentrated on helping design and build parts for civilian uses of nuclear technology, i.e. nuclear power generation. Yet, with the arrival of the eager Mr. Schwab, also came the company's participation in the illegal proliferation of nuclear weapons technology. By 1969, the incorporation of Escher Wyss into Sulzer was fully completed, and they would be rebranded into Sulzer AG, dropping the historic name Escher Wyss from their name. I wonder why. It was eventually revealed, thanks to a review and report carried out by the Swiss authorities and a man named Peter Hug, that Sulzer Escher Wyss began secretly procuring and building key parts for nuclear weapons during the 1960s. The company, while Schwab was on the board, also began playing a critical role in the development of South Africa's illegal nuclear weapons program during the darkest years of the apartheid regime. By the way, Israel was involved in that as well.
Okay, hold on a second.
You're welcome.
I was waiting for you for that moment. I knew you were going to say it. Okay.
Yeah.
So again, saying Israel was involved in that is like saying the American citizen somewhere in Indiana was involved in the Ukraine war.
Yeah.
No, that's not the case.
It was what's
there were certain phantoms within the Israeli government.
Yeah.
Okay. Just like the American State Department, right? You have these like segments of the government that really have nothing to do with the country or the people.
Yeah. It was Paris, mostly Paris.
They got their own thing going on.
Yeah. Klaus Schwab was a leading figure in the founding of a company culture which helped Pretoria build 6 nuclear weapons and partially assemble a 7th. In the report, Peter Hug outlined how Sulzer Escher Wyss AG, referred to post-merger as just Sulzer AG, had supplied vital components to the South African government and found evidence of Germany's role in supporting the racist regime, also revealing that the Swiss government was aware of illegal deals but tolerated them in silence while supporting some of them actively and criticized them only half-heartedly.
Can I stop you for 1 second? I'm sorry, dude. I'm sorry. Just goes to show you, not only was he not ashamed of his father and the company and what they were trying to do for the Nazis, he immediately tried to give that technology to the only openly racist, meaning in the non-Arab world or the non-African world. There's plenty of open racists there, but the only openly racist country in the Western world. He immediately was trying to give them. It's literally, he's like, okay, the Nazis, the Nazi regime is essentially being built up in South Africa now. Let's give them the bomb.
Hoog's report was eventually finalized in a work entitled Switzerland and South Africa, 1948 to 1994, final report of the NFP 42 Plus commissioned by the Swiss Federal Council, which was compiled and written by George Kreis and published in 2007. By 1967, sorry, 1 second. Oh my goodness. By 1967, South Africa had constructed a reactor as part of a plan to produce plutonium. The Safari 2, located at Pelindaba. Oh my God. Safari 2 was part of a project to develop a reactor moderated by heavy water, which would be fueled by natural uranium and cooled using sodium. This linked to developing heavy water for the creation of uranium, the same technology which had been utilized by the Nazis, also with the help of Escher Wyss, may explain why South Africans initially got Escher Wyss involved. But by 1969, South Africa abandoned the heavy water reactor project at Pelindaba because it was draining resources from their uranium enrichment program that had first begun in 1967. In 1970, Escher Wyss were definitely deeply involved with nuclear technology, as seen in a record available in the Landesarchivs Baden-Württemberg. The record shows details of a public procurement process and contains information about award talks with specific companies involved in the procurement of nuclear tech and materials. The companies cited include Nukem, Ude, Kranz, Prusag, Escher Wyss, Siemens, Rheintal, Leibold, Lurgi, and the infamous Transnuclear. The Swiss and South Africans had a close relationship through this period of history, when it was hardly easy for the brutal South African regime to find close allies. You know who's half Swiss, half South African? Roger Federer.
Right.
Like, ethnically.
Yeah.
I think his mom's from South Africa, his dad's from Switzerland. By November 4th, 1977, the United Nations Security Council had enacted Resolution 418, which imposed a mandatory arms embargo against South Africa, an embargo that wouldn't be fully lifted until 1994. George Kreis pointed out the following in his detailed assessment of the Hoog report. The fact that authorities assume a laissez-faire attitude even after May 1978 comes to the fore in an exchange of letters between the anti-apartheid movement and the DFMA in October-December 1978. As the study by Huga explicates, the anti-apartheid movement of Switzerland pointed to German reports, according to which Sulzer Escher Wyss and a company called BBC, not to be confused, had supplied parts for the South African uranium enrichment plant, and to repeated credits to Eskom, which also included considerable contributions by Swiss banks. These assertions led to questions of whether the Federal Council, in light of fundamental support of the UN embargo, ought not to instigate the National Bank to stop authorizing credits for Eskom in the future. Swiss banks would help to fund the South African race to nukes, and by 1986, Sulzer Escher Wyss were successfully producing special compressors for uranium enrichment. So while everybody was watching Maradona win the World Cup, these guys were busy making nukes. Next, the founding of World Economic Forum.
I just want to say that from the very tip of Chile, right, of South America, it's about 600 miles to the very tip of Antarctica.
Yeah.
From the very tip of Africa, I can't get a straight answer, but it looks like it's maybe like, also the closest possible distance. Like, look, South America is a completely different continent, right? So the point is that, isn't it funny how you got Nazis positioning themselves in the south of South America, right? And then you have South Africa, another openly racist country, right? On the very, very, very tip of another continent, Africa, at the closest point to Antarctica.
Yeah.
I'll just leave that there for your
Yeah.
consideration.
Yeah.
That's something that just occurred to me. So the founding of the World Economic Forum, right? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah.
Okay. In 1970, the young upstart Klaus Schwab wrote to the European Commission and asked for help in setting up a, quote, non-commercial think tank for European business leaders. The European Commission would sponsor the event as well, sending French politician Raymond Barre, I suppose, to act as the forum's intellectual.
Barre.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Raymond Barre, who was at that time European Commissioner for Economic and Financial Affairs, would later go on to become French Prime Minister and would be accused of making anti-Semitic comments while in office. Shocking. I am simply beside myself in
Yes.
shock.
Here is me, and here's myself next to myself.
Right. I'm very surprised. I was like, did you know that? I couldn't believe. Can you believe
Here's
that?
me.
Yeah.
And here's myself. I'm beside myself.
Yes. So in 1970, Schwab left Escher Wyss to organize a 2-week business managerial conference. In 1971, the first meeting of the World Economic Forum, then called the European Dude, we got to have this guy on our show.
Who is this guy?
No, we got to have the writer of this article on our
Oh,
show.
yeah, for sure.
Let's get this guy, man.
Yeah,
Right. He probably knows so much more than what he put in here.
Oh, of course.
So then called the European Management Symposium, convened in Davos, Switzerland. Around 450 participants from 31 countries would take part in Schwab's first European Management Symposium, mostly made up of managers from various European companies, politicians, and US academics. The project was recorded as organized by Klaus Schwab and his secretary, Hilda Stoll, who later that same year would become Klaus Schwab's wife.
Yeah.
Sure, he likes women.
Yeah.
Klaus's European Symposium was not an original idea. As writer Ganga J. Aratnam stated quite coherently, even though his name is not possible to be said coherently.
Yeah.
He wrote, Klaus Schwab's spirit of Davos was also the spirit of Harvard. Okay. Not only had the business school advocated the idea of a symposium, prominent Harvard economist John Kenneth Galbraith championed the affluent society as well as capitalism's planning needs and the rapprochement of East and West. So that's a lie. These people have nothing to do with capitalism.
Yeah.
Okay. It's also true that, as Aratnam also pointed out, this was not the first time Davos had hosted such events. Between 1928 and 1931, the Davos University conferences took place at the Hotel Belvedere. Events which were co-founded by Albert Einstein and were only halted by the Great Depression and the threat of looming war. Okay. Yeah. The Club of Rome and the WEF. The most influential group that spurred the creation of Klaus Schwab's symposium was the Club of Rome, an influential think tank of the scientific and moneyed elite that mirrors the World Economic Forum in many ways, including in its promotion of a global governance model led by the technocratic elite. The club had been founded in 1968 by Italian industrialist Aurelio Pace and Scottish chemist Alexander King during a private meeting at a residence owned by the Rockefeller family in Bellagio, Italy.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
Among its first, wait, what did you say?
No, I was just reading out his name. Yeah, Pecce.
Piceni.
Picenia. Cookie.
Yeah, Aurelio Picenia. Among its first accomplishments was a 1972 book entitled The Limits to Growth, excuse me, that largely focused on global overpopulation, warning that if the world's consumption patterns and population growth continued at the same high rates of the time, the Earth would strike its limits within a century. At the third meeting of the World Economic Forum in 73, the year my brother was born, Piché delivered a speech summarizing the book, which the World Economic Forum website remembers as having been the distinguishing event of this historical meeting. The same year, the Club of Rome would publish a report detailing an adaptive model for global governance that would divide the world into 10 interconnected economical political regions. So I really would like to know at this third meeting, what was the date of this third meeting?
Yeah.
At the third meeting of the World Economic Forum. Is it always the same year that they're always meeting in Davos at this?
Same time, January around.
Just that, it's funny that, in the same year was born the doctor that would throw the biggest monkey wrench into so far, that has been so far.
Yes. By the way, they meet in Tibet, Angria world.
Yeah.
I
just like to point out that my brother remains the only man on earth that has thrown any level of monkey wrench into their plans. Can we just
yes,
simmer in that for a moment?
calls for station identification. Yes.
Okay, moving. Okay, so now we go. Okay, fine. So 100% true.
Yeah.
At the third meeting of the World Economic Forum in 1973, Pichenya delivered a speech summarizing the book, which the World Economic Forum website remembers as having been the distinguishing event of this historical meeting. This is my Dan Aykroyd impression. I'm reading very fast and speaking very fast. That same year, the Club of Rome would publish a report detailing an adaptive model for global governance that would divide the world into 10 interconnected economic political regions. Okay. I should slow down a little bit. Okay.
Yes.
So the Club of Rome was long controversial for its obsession with reducing the global population and many of its earlier policies, with critics described as influenced by eugenics and neo-Malthusian from Thomas Malthus. That's Malthusian.
By the way, for folks at home, whoever wants to read the kind of the Bible of Malthusian theory, which is basically population control, there's a book. I actually have it because it was required reading in my sociology class, called The Stork and the Plow.
Stork and the Plow.
And I hate to Farrakhan, but it was unfortunately written by and the plow was written by people named Paul R.
Ehrlicher, right?
and H. Ehrlich and Gretchen C. Daly. So it's a husband and wife, supposedly Jewish people.
Well, maybe the wife Gretchen. You ever met a Jewish woman named Gretchen? Not likely.
No.
She probably was the bad influence on him.
Yeah. So the Stork and the Plow, the equity answer. The equity, this is the first time you would hear, this is in 1997, the equity, not equality, the equity answer to the human dilemma. Dude, I didn't even know what equity was when I was in college.
The human dilemma. Doesn't that sound like the Jewish dilemma?
Psychotic. Dude, if you read this book, it's absolutely psychotic. It's one of the most psychotic. They mention religious people and this and this. Believe.
I heard Elon Musk. I heard Elon Musk pretending to not like this guy's book.
Really?
Yeah.
Psychotic. I have this book, dude. If you read this, it's like I read this book on a crapper.
Hey,
folks at home.
Hey, just in the spirit of thank you very much. In the spirit of fast talkers, do you think Ben Stein would ever agree to be interviewed by us?
Maybe.
He knows a lot about Malthusian stuff. He speaks out against it.
Probably.
He's very much. Ben Stein is an underused Jewish resource for the good guys. I feel.
Yeah.
I think my brother. I think he was interviewed by my brother. He interviewed my brother, I believe.
Yeah. Really? Oh.
I think so.
That's actually hilarious. I mean, that's like the ultimate here, Ben Stein, Dr. Zelenko. I don't see anything on YouTube. I don't know where it would be. But anyway.
Folks, I might be wrong, but just so you know, I have not seen the vast majority of my brother's interviews because I was looking for medicine and talking people away from poisoning themselves for a job.
The World According to Ben Stein, Medical Tyranny with Dr. Zelenko, Apple Podcast. Ben Stein and co-host Judah Friedman are joined by Adam King and Presidential Mental Freedom nominee, Dr. Vladimir Zelenko.
Okay, so I'm not tripping. That did happen. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So Where the hell was I meeting? At the third meet. Wait, were you reading or was I reading?
No, you were reading, and then I'm going to read the last thing.
Okay. Among its first accomplishments was a 1972 book. No, I read that already, right? Yeah. Okay. The Club of Rome was long controversial for its obsession with reducing global population, and many of its earlier policies, which critics describe as influenced by eugenics and Thomas Malthus, a neo-Malthusian. However, in the club's infamous 1991 book, The First Global Revolution, it was argued that such policies could gain popular support if the masses were able to link them with an existential fight against the common enemy. To that effect, the First Global Revolution contains a passage entitled, quote, "The common enemy of humanity is man."
Indeed.
So listen, it really fits in with Bart Sadok's essay.
Yeah.
The common enemy of humanity, old earthers, is man, Adam, new earther.
Yeah.
If you see it through that lens, oh boy, that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Because otherwise it's retarded.
Yeah. Yeah.
Retarded. Quote, "In searching for a common enemy against whom we can unite, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming," they were searching for a common enemy. Interesting. In searching for a common enemy against whom we can unite. Who's we? We came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill. In their totality and their interactions, these phenomena do constitute a common threat which must be confronted by everyone together. But in designating these dangers as the enemy, we fall into the trap, which we have already warned readers about, namely mistaking symptoms for causes. All these dangers are caused by human intervention in natural processes, and it is only through changed attitudes and behavior that they can be overcome. The real enemy then is humanity itself. In the years since, the elite that populate the Club of Rome, dude, we have to do a whole Club of Rome episode.
We will, yeah.
In the years since, the elite that populate the Club of Rome and the World Economic Forum have frequently argued that population control methods are essential to protecting the environment. It is thus unsurprising that the World Economic Forum would similarly use the issues of climate and environment as a way to market otherwise unpopular policies, such as those of the Great Reset, as necessary. The past is prologue. Go ahead.
And I'll read this and then we'll wrap up, sir, because it's 3 hours and 45 minutes.
Oh, dude, you still have to get out of there, right?
Yes, I do. That's why. Yeah.
Could you stop going there, please?
All right. I mean, listen, I don't have interruptions here. I mean, what do you want?
I heard more noise coming from the neighbors than I do from your parents.
All righty. Well, they don't come in here. So.
And also, the last time you tried to play music in this place,
Mm-hmm.
oh, no, that was at your parents' place, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway, so this is the end. The past is prologue. Since the founding of the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab has become one of the most powerful people in the world, and his Great Reset has made it more important than ever to scrutinize the man sitting on the globalist throne. Given his prominent role in the far-reaching effort to transform every aspect of the existing order, Klaus Schwab's history was difficult to research. When you start to dig into the history of a man like Schwab, who sits aloft at other shadowy elite movers and shakers, you soon find lots of information has been hidden or removed. Klaus is somebody who wants to stay hidden in the shadowy corners of society and who will only allow the average person to see a well-presented construct of their chosen persona. Is the real Klaus Schwab a kindly old uncle figure wishing to do good for humanity, or is he really the son of a Nazi collaborator who used the slave labor and helped Nazi efforts to obtain the first atomic bomb? Is Klaus the honest business manager who we should trust to create a fairer society and workplace for the common man, or is he the person who helped push Escher Wyss into a technological revolution that led to its role in the illegal creation of nuclear weapons for South Africa's racist apartheid regime? The evidence I've looked at does not suggest a kindly man, but rather a member of a wealthy, well-connected family that has a history of helping create weapons of mass destruction for aggressive racist governments. As Klaus Schwab said in 2006, knowledge will soon be available everywhere. I call it the Googleization of globalization. It's not what you know anymore, it's how you use it. How you have to be a pace setter. Klaus Schwab continues himself to be a pace setter and a top table player, and it must be said that his qualifications and experience are impressive. Yet when it comes to practicing what you preach, Klaus has been found out. One of the three biggest challenges on the priority list for the World Economic Forum is the non-proliferation of nuclear weapons, yet neither Klaus Schwab or his father Eugene lived up to those same principles when they were in business, quite the opposite. In January, Klaus Schwab announced that 2021 is the year that the World Economic Forum and its allies must rebuild trust with the masses. However, if Schwab continues to hide his history and that of his father's connections to the National Socialist model company that was Escher Wyss during the 30s and 40s, then people will have good reason to distrust the underlying motivations of his overreaching, undemocratic Great Reset agenda.
What an understatement. God.
In the case of the Schwabs, the evidence doesn't point at simply poor business practices or some sort of misunderstanding. The story of the Schwab family instead reveals a habit of working with genocidal dictators for the base of motives of profit and power. The Nazis and the South African apartheid regime are two of the worst examples of leadership in modern politics, yet the Schwabs obviously couldn't or wouldn't see that at the time. In the case of Klaus Schwab himself, it appears that he has helped to launder relics of the Nazi era, i.e., its nuclear ambitions and its population control ambitions, so as to ensure the continuity of a deeper agenda. While serving in a leadership capacity at Sulzer Escher Wyss, the company sought to aid the nuclear ambitions of the South African regime, then the most Nazi-adjacent government in the world, preserving Escher Wyss' own Nazi-era legacy. Then, through the World Economic Forum, Schwab has helped to rehabilitate eugenics-influenced population control policies during the post-World War II era, a time when revelations of Nazi atrocities quickly brought the pseudoscience into great disrepute. Is there any reason to believe that Klaus Schwab, as he exists today, has changed in any way? Or is he still the public face of a decades-long effort to ensure the survival of a very old agenda? The last question that should be asked about the real motivations behind the actions of Herr Schwab may be the most important for the future of humanity. Is Klaus Schwab trying to create the fourth industrial revolution, or is he trying to create the Fourth Reich?
Succeeded in creating the Fourth Reich.
Unfreaking believable. Swolage.